Explain like I'm 5. Why can't you make a pet out of a wolf, a bear, or a lion? Dogs and cats are not merely trained, they are domesticated. That means they have been bred to be friendlier to humans, to be easier to handle, and to be less aggressive in general. That does not mean that any individual must be friendly to all humans, but just that there is a genetic disposition to be. Pick out a random stray dog and it will be less fearful of humans, on average, and more willing to be handled and trained by a human. Any animal can be trained. That means changing the behavior of one individual through rewards and punishments. But those changes don't affect that animal's offspring. Train a bear all you want. Its cubs will be just as wild as the parent was before training. It may be a lot easier to train just because it's grown up around humans, but that's still not domestication, just kind of used to being around us. With domestication, you take the individuals that are the friendliest, easiest to handle, etc., and breed them together. Over generations, the offspring aren't just used to humans being around, they want humans to be around, even if they've never met one. Wolves have been domesticated into dogs. Wild wolves are not domesticated, though. Bears and lions are not domesticated. You could domesticate them, but why? They're big, aggressive, dangerous, and expensive to house and to feed. There's no point in domesticating them, and handling wild ones is, in a word, difficult. Good luck with that. Cats are an interesting one, too. They aren't necessarily domesticated. They kind of domesticated themselves. They started by living around humans, eating general vermin, and then we started to make use of them in situations where they had a finite use, like ships, and eventually had to feed them, at least till a fresh load came on board. Yeah, and also they're smaller than us, unlike other feline species. I have a cat who's pretty ill-tempered and chooses violence all the time. Watching him swat at the tiny moving images of humans on TV makes me suspect that if he was the size of a lion, I'd have died years ago. Do you worry that you're not the only one of you two who has had that thought? Domestication takes a long time, over several generations. IRC, there have been attempts to domesticate foxes, but that's a process that requires selective breeding to get the kind of animal you want. Sure, you could make a pet out of a bear, in the sense that you take care of it and benefit from it somehow, but is still a bear. I had some neighbors who wanted to rehab raccoons, and bless their bleeding hearts, they loved those animals, but they were still wild creatures that tore up their house and ended up causing serious issues with the neighbors. They treated their raccoons like pets, but they weren't really. Pets. Yes, I believe you're thinking of the Eli5 experiment to tame the silver fox. This was largely successful, but it took a long time. After over 40 generations of breeding, in short, Eli5 produced a group of friendly, domesticated foxes who displayed behavioral, physiological, and anatomical characteristics that were not found in the wild population, or were found in wild foxes, but with much lower frequency. Many of the domesticated foxes had floppy ears, short or curly tails, extended reproductive seasons, changes in fur coloration, and changes in the shape of their skulls, jaws, and teeth. They also lost their musky fox smell. Trout wrote in 1999 that after 40 years of the experiment and the breeding of 45,000 foxes, a group of animals had emerged that were as tame and as eager to please as a dog. Fitch described the tame foxes as incredibly endearing. So you can't just take a wild animal and expect it to be a good pet. It takes many generations of careful selective breeding to select for traits, e.g., tameness, low aggression, obedience, that make the animal suitable for companionship. I think Siegfried and Roy tiger accident is a good example for why not. Even if acclimated to humans, the animals are so powerful that one short nip can kill you. Explain like I'm 5. How are internet wires laid across the deep oceans, and don't aquatic animals or disturbances damage them? I know that for cross-border internet connectivity, wires are laid across oceans. How is that made possible, and how is the maintenance ensured? Big boats with spools of cable literally just sail across the ocean, dropping it as they go. As far as animals are concerned, the cable is just a rock. Things like coral will grow on them. The cables are well armored to prevent damage. There was a shark attack on a cable in the 80s, probably trying to eat something sitting on top of it. Far more common is an anchor or trawling net damaging the cable. Cables are redundant. There are always two or more on the same path, so that if one is damaged, there isn't an outage of service. When damage occurs, if it is in a shallow area, divers can fix it. If it is in the deep open ocean, a ship will drop a hook and pull it up to be repaired on the surface. How does a ship carry a super thick cable that's thousands of miles long? Multiple ships, multiple spools. No one said it was cheap or easy. How are the cables connected to each other? Nobody is talking about how the cables aren't laid in a straight line, but basically in a continuous S-curve. This makes it possible to pull up just a section of the cable for repairs and also allows for a cable to get hit and dragged but not get really damaged since it's not under any tension. Very big slow-moving ships with massive spindles of weighted cables that very slowly roll the cables out that sink down to the bottom. Maintenance is handled either by diving technicians or aquatic drones. Generally, they hook a grapple line on the cable and hoist it up, cut the bad part out, and splice together. For the really deep stuff where that's not possible, they'll pull the two ends up at the deepest parts they can reach, pull the now detached piece up, and either find the fault, repair it, and resplice, or splice a new length in. Why don't aquatic animals damage them? They totally do. Sharks like to take a bite out of internet infrastructure. We're not entirely sure why. Explain like I'm 5. How does leftover cement in cement trucks not harden and slowly accumulate in the mixer, essentially clogging it? Title says it all. I'm sure a thin layer of cement will be left over after they pour it all. And I would imagine that thin layer would harden, and then the next time they use the mixer, another thin layer would be left over, and so on and so forth. After a while, I would imagine it would accumulate to the point where it renders the mixer unusable. Why is this not the case? Typically, the concrete yard is close enough to the job site that the concrete won't set between the job and back at the yard. The typical cure time on concrete is a few years. That's plenty of time for a two-way trip to still have the concrete be liquid. So the driver just has to get a hose out and rinse off the residue left over. Occasionally, the weather and timing does help it dry somewhat, in which case the yards have acid washes and other chemicals which will allow the driver to take care of any thin buildup. If a larger amount is left inside due to a bad driver or unforeseen circumstances, then the driver has to hop inside with power tools and chisel it out. If there's a large amount of concrete left over in the drum from a job, they actually will dump it into a mold to create those movable highway concrete dividers people called K-rails. If too much gets built up, you donate the truck to the Mythbusters. One of my favorite episodes, that explosion was shockingly powerful. Probably the best explosion noise ever. It just fucking disappeared. Edit explosion, not explain. Concrete, which is a combination of cement, water, and aggregate, gravel, and sand, doesn't set or cure well unless it's still. Therefore, after the load is delivered, the barrel of the mixer is still moving and agitating the mix. It's easy enough to pour water in the mixer at the end of the day, reverse the barrel to combine the leftovers with the water, then pour the resulting slurry out into a waste pile. In the event concrete is left to cure inside the barrel, it's a painstaking process involving something akin to jackhammers to chip out the hardened mix. It's grueling, hot, and loud. Take a look at any construction site, and concrete mixers, both coming and going, have their barrels rotating. When we call a concrete truck on a construction site, we always need to keep a space for the truck to dump any residue of concrete left and to wash. Each truck have a tank of water to wash on the site. You can see an example of this here. Obviously, this isn't perfect, but it get the job done in between site. At the end of the day, the truck will do a more thorough clean, like seen here. It does. There was an episode of Dirty Jobs back in the day about chipping the cement off the inside of a mixer. Explain like I'm 5. Why is it important to have your teeth in order for surgery? I had gallbladder surgery last year, and I have an upcoming one this year for my thyroid, but I was wondering, why is it that they ask about dental stuff? Why is it important for surgery? What happens to people who have emergency situations and have like bad teeth or something? Just curious. Anesthesiologist here. It's so we can avoid damaging teeth when placing a breathing tube. The state of the teeth is really irrelevant to us doing the case. We just care that we know the baseline and can document it, and then avoid making it worse. An accidentally dislodged tooth can easily go into the airway. For some surgeries, where they implant foreign hardware, like heart valves or hips, they want teeth that are infected to be pulled to avoid infection spreading to that hard-to-remove implant. So, is there any infection concern at all? Like my dad had to have aortic valve replacement, and they had him take a course of antibiotics before they operated, I guess for fear of infecting the tissue in the heart. Dentist here. The bacteria naturally occurring in your mouth can form colonies on artificial valves in the heart. That's why we, or cardiologists, sometimes recommend antibiotics before dental procedures. It's also why he should work to have a clean, healthy mouth. You don't want inflamed gums or infected teeth, allowing bacteria a fast track around your mouth's immune system. They mainly need to know if you have crowns or bridge work, as those items can come loose if they intubate you. Can vouch for this? I'm a GIMD, and the tooth fairy has come more than once while I've done a procedure. It's amazing how loose some teeth can be and still stay in your mouth. Hey, someone in the same boat. There are several reasons. I'm getting ready to have heart surgery, and the most likely place for bacteria to enter your bloodstream is through open wounds, and there are no easier places because of the moisture and heat for bacteria to enter into your bloodstream than your mouth. Backup, dentures, crowns, bridges, etc. can all impact intubation as well. Some older implants, dentures/crowns may also be made of just enough magnetic material to be problematic in MRIs as well. Fun fact, I had to shell out $6,000 for dental surgery before having the pleasure of shelling out $7,500 out-of-pocket max for heart surgery. The magic bones in your face not covered by your medical insurance have to be fixed before a surgeon will work on the parts of you that are covered by medical insurance. Side note, dental care is not expensive. Dental neglect is. Probably those questions relate to intubation. The anesthesiologist will want to know if you have dentures, as those usually come out before surgery. Well, that's another episode of Explain Like I'm 5 in the books. I really appreciate all of you who made it this far into the video. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, it would really help the channel out a lot if you gave the video a thumbs up, subscribe, or leave a comment down below. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.